Let's go ahead and get this started, huh?
Walmart is fourth. I figured Walmart was above.
It's 5 o'clock, Clarksburg City Council Conference session, Wednesday, March 8th, 2023 at 5 p.m. We're going to deviate from the agenda. We're going to start with item number 2, and that's discussion regarding proposed council attendance requirement ordinance.
Skip right to it, huh? Okay.
I'm sorry, Will,
It's
you
okay.
ready?
No, I'm ready.
I think Wayne wants to speak first.
Huh?
I think Wayne wants to speak first.
Wayne wants to speak first?
I'm just kidding.
Oh,
Okay.
you got me. Huh?
Here.
Wayne, go ahead. I mean, Will.
So I've been suing about this for a little while now, and I looked on AM Legal's website, looked across the state of West Virginia, and looked across the great state of Ohio and other states, and I think council, the city of Clarksburg, not just council, could benefit from an attendance requirement ordinance that would keep council here and doing the city's business. So I got copies for everyone to look at, and also have a copy for the city attorney as well. It spells out exactly how it's going to work, and all over myself. Gary,
Sir?
keep a copy for your minutes. Oh, you got one of them?
Yeah, I
already?
got it.
Okay.
Wayne needs one.
You only vote for Wayne?
I got a couple copies. And like I said, it says what it says, and it doesn't say what it doesn't say. So I mean, it's as long as it checks out from the attorney, I'd like to have a place on the agenda at the next meeting or sometime soon.
Will, can you kind of just tell me a little bit about what this is and what this is supposed to accomplish?
Well, I think that it's supposed to accomplish. It keeps people in these seats up here, and I think that's the desire of our citizens. And they want council who's effective and is going to be up here and preside over the business of the city. Other than that, I don't. It's not a target. It's not. I'm not going after anybody in this, but the city of Clarksburg does not have a requirement of any way, shape, or form. So, like I said, I looked over different states, and I looked over the state of West Virginia. There's several municipalities in the state of West Virginia that do it. I believe it uses state code to make sure that anybody who happens to be in the situation that spells out that they have the opportunity to appeal, and I think it's a great way to move forward.
So if you miss one council meeting, you miss two. Is there what's the?
It's 3 consecutive business meetings or special meetings or work sessions, or 1/3 of the regular year, or 8 meetings of regular business meetings over this period of 1 year.
And you'll be taken off, removed from?
No, there'll be a discussion or discretion of the mayor or council, and if there's a legitimate reason, say it's a medical emergency,
What are you pointing at me for?
or a major operation, or like you had, or something like that. Obviously that would be discretion. That would be taken into advisement, and that's basically what this does. So
Okay. Well, I've been on here probably twice as long as you, and I know in my 3.5 years, there's not been one meeting that we've ever even been in close to not having a quorum to have a meeting. The only times I see, and I'm going to say the old men, Mr. Mouthful Joe got shot and and almost died, and not due to his neglect, he got shot and he missed several months of meetings, which he should have. And so that's one case. I got the COVID. I missed 25 meetings. Then I was on home confinement. I couldn't go from my bedroom to the bathroom.
Did you have an ankle brace?
No, I had oxygen.
That too, but
I had oxygen that I couldn't leave my house.
Good mark, Laffy.
It was a good one, but anyway, some people, I've not known this really in my 4 years or 3.5 on council. I've not known it to be a problem. I think everybody takes their position seriously, and I've never known this to be an issue to address it. As far as I'm concerned, that people miss.
The intent is to make sure it doesn't happen.
So you're going for future, and so if it might start happening, it would prevent that?
I believe so. I mean, it's explicitly states, without adequate reasons such as extended illness, military duty, conflicting public service obligations, immediate family illness, or any other reason council in its discretion deems reasonable. I mean, obviously I don't think it's a witch hunt up here. I think that's perfectly reasonable to, if somebody happens to win the election or whatever, and they just don't show up, or they show up willy nilly, and I think that's wasting our time. It's wasting our constituents' time. And I think we have the opportunity to move forward.
Well, I think also the hour and a half that I spend and we spend at these meetings, I spend probably twice that amount on outside stuff on Saturdays and Sundays, on the weekends, where I'm getting calls about this problem, that problem. I attend not only this, I'm a member of the Region 6 Development Council based on my role here. I go to meetings in Lewis County, and it's a 4-state with county commissioners and other mayors and council members. I
think we all serve. We all serve on boards and committees.
Well, yes, that's way outside. So I don't know how you define it by just attending meetings that make you a council member.
Well, I mean, it does state meetings, work sessions, and special meetings. It doesn't go with board meetings. Although in the city charter there are stipulations with boards and committees that if people don't attend those boards, even not just council, but the members of those boards and committees, if they don't attend, they can be removed as well.
Yeah. Well, I just feel if it was an issue, a problem, like I said, I've been on here for 4.5 years, and somebody goes on vacation and they miss a meeting, or they whatever the reason is. I mean, I just don't see that as a problem when you get elected to these. You're not doing it. You're doing it for the love of the community and
Absolutely.
a public servant, and to be held. I want, and there's a way. I'm all.
Would you be okay with somebody who came and won an election and didn't serve 1 hour up here?
there's a reason that we voted in, and it's called referendum, initiative referendum and recall. There is a way, if my constituents are upset with me not attending meetings, and they get a recall ballot going, they could take
I don't disagree
me
with
or you or out of office. So there is an outlet or remedy, and that's who we serve as the people. I'm not here to serve with or serve for this council. I'm here to serve for the citizens who voted me in, and if they feel that I'm not representing them well, and I agree, if you get elected and you don't show up, I'll start the petition myself. We'll get the citizens up there and we'll vote them out. But I don't think we really need to police ourselves at this time. But
What's the problem with this though?
I understand the intent of it, but I feel like that.
no, there's no problem.
I feel like that the problem is that how do you prove or disprove that I have a family illness?
Well, I think that's understandable. I mean, I think we all know each other well enough to say that if somebody has a medical emergency or a medical illness or major operation where they can't come to the council meeting, I think we all aware of that. Now, if I go missing in action, nobody hears from Will for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they're wondering where he's at, and I'm not returning phone calls. I think that's a concern, that we can now act on. I don't know, and I'm not. I don't disagree with your statement about initiative referendum or recall rather, but this is another way that citizens might not have to pursue that. I mean, that's that we should be doing our due diligence up here too. I mean, I think we know that.
I mean, we go to the doctor, we can get a doctor excuse. I mean, my son goes to the doctor, he get a doctor.
So I presented doctor's excuse to you.
Not to me.
I mean, it's not. I don't feel like that I would have to answer to you or any of these other council members if I have to miss a meeting because of a reason that I have to miss it. I have four children.
We're talking about one meeting.
I have 4 children,
That's
and
why-
there are a
that's
lot of
why-
different things that occur that would maybe qualify and I don't feel like that I need to be answering to the rest of this board because of that. I think that that's something that, and I understand that if it were a problem, then absolutely. But we also know how this becomes very polarized and politicized. And if you have a reason that you want to say she's missing all these meetings and you get with 4 other council members, you're going to make a determination on something about me and remove me from a position I was voted into. I mean, I think we're getting a little.
We can't just come up with our own rules. The rules would be stated. You would sign on the council. You would commit to these. You commit to following the charter. This is in the charter. It doesn't say just one time. It says 3 times, which I'd be open to negotiating if it's too. If it's not hard enough, but it doesn't give you. It says 3 consecutive
As long
meetings.
as I have my doctor's excuse, I'd be good. I mean, that's just silly to me. I don't. I understand accountability and wanting to hold people accountable.
We get health insurance. There's a reason we should probably be required.
I don't get
to show
paid.
up.
I don't get paid for special meetings.
We're getting paid for attending regular council meetings. We're not getting paid for special meetings.
We don't get.
I don't get paid. I don't get paid for a work
Work
session to
session
attend
is
a work
not
session.
part of the
It's in the charter.
requirement.
Conference session, work session, and regular and special sessions are all 3 meetings that we attend.
It's stated in the charter that the work sessions and it's stated.
There's no way because no one knows how many work
2
sessions we're
meetings
gonna
a
have.
month. What about the work sessions if we do?
Okay, but if somebody calls
3
a
of them?
special session, a work session or a conference session, we should all be attending, right? That's what we sign up to do.
Well, absolutely,
Yeah.
we should. But I don't want you determining whether or not if I can't
Not
come
me,
to a
but
meeting.
it would be in the charter. It wouldn't be me.
Wait, this is going
It
into
would be
the charter
you. You'd be a vote.
This
Huh?
would be an ordinance that we're passing, right?
Well,
to go into the
the
charter.
state
Where's it
code
gonna
says
go?
what you can and can't do, and there would be the opportunity to appeal any type of.
Well, go ahead and
in
let's
front-
put this
front of-
into a charter. Then we won't have any questions. Let's let the voters vote if they want us to do this. Let's put this as a charter amendment, and then the voters vote on it. I don't want you voting on what I'm supposed to do. I like the people to vote on what we're supposed to do. Do you not see that?
I'm okay being held accountable. It doesn't matter to me.
Well,
But I don't
listen,
want you holding me accountable, Jerry. I want the citizens who
The
vote.
language will be holding us accountable, not me.
Yeah, well, it will be you.
How would it be me?
you're one of the council members is going to be
If we can't follow the charter, then it would come up just like anything.
charter.
I'm sorry,
Follow
okay.
the charter. You're right.
I'm
Let's
talking this
follow the
ordinance right
charter.
here. I'm sorry,
Derek.
this ordinance right here.
No, let's follow the charter. That's what we're voted in by the charter. We're not voted in by what you or these other members say. It's what the charter says. Change the charter, and I'm all for it. Put it on the ballot. Do a charter change, and if the citizens want that, I'll listen to what they say. They're the ones who put us in here to hold us accountable. I don't want you holding me accountable, Derek.
Keep pointing at me. I get it.
Well, I mean, you seem to be.
You know, instead of,
Being held accountable, yeah.
I mean, I agree. I don't know if you could remove someone from council for that.
It says clearly states in 667 state code. That's why it's referenced in there.
But like
That
Lily
you all
said,
could remove
it's very
them?
No, as
subjective.
long as it's provisional, it listed in the codified.
I see your intention, and in a way I agree with you, but I also agree with Lily. It's very subjective. I don't know how you enforce it. Maybe if you want something in there, because I agree this has not been a problem, but if you want something in there just in case for the future, it might be better to go after the pay. Because I know some cities do that. Like if you don't show up for a meeting, you don't get paid.
That's something we can also explore. I have no problem doing that.
Not that it's a lot of money, but
But I feel if this is something that the council wants, if 4 council members want this, do a charter change. I'd like the people to be saying this is a problem and we think that we want it addressed.
Section 115 of the codified ordinance of the city of Clarksburg specifically deals with city council. I mean, it's not the.
and to be clear, I'm not really against it. I see your intention, but it seems a little sketchy.
Yeah,
Well, how can it be fixed?
I'm not sure.
I don't feel like we have a problem. And I understand that you're saying that if eventually we have a problem, then let the voters do what they have to do. I mean, if you have someone who is repeatedly absent and there's no explanation for that, they haven't had a massive situation or an injury or something like that, then let the voters act. I just feel like policing ourselves on attendance because
In all fairness, we're the only people that can. I mean, I understand the recall allows you to do that, but we haven't seen that in action yet. Maybe we will, but I just at this point, we can take it into our own hands. And I'm not saying it's got to be. I don't think it seems like there's some perceived targeting here. That's not what this is about.
no, I don't feel like that.
No.
I just
But-
think that it gets really hairy when you have a polarized situation up here, which I mean, those are the facts. And you get 4 guys together that say, "Hey, she's missing," and I have a life outside of this. I love this, or I wouldn't be here. Because trust me, this is not fun. We all know that it's highly stressful. There's a lot of things that need, a lot of things that we have to attend. And a lot of things we have to do. But I also have a life outside of this place.
I agree.
I've been dedicated to this council. I was on vacation.
Honestly, I'm not looking
down
for
in
any
Florida.
explanations. I'm just saying.
I was on vacation
this
in
allows us
Florida,
to act. I mean,
and there was a situation going on up here, and I had to sneak away because my wife and kids said, "Dad, you're on vacation. Don't fool with that city council. Come here and relax and enjoy." But I called back in to attend a meeting when they were going to appoint a park board employee, and I felt it was that important to come call back in. So I just don't see, in my 3.5 years, I've never seen, the only long-term instance was Mr. Malfajoe, and he had a very valid, and me, who I had a very valid, lucky to still be here.
I think the system of checks and balances allows it, if there was any situation where we said, targeting you or him or whatever, people would have enough common sense to say, no, and at the end of the day, it could be appealed in front of the magistrate. So,
I don't know if I can
Sure,
go
report.
with the common sense thing. I mean, we've seen some pretty nonsensical things that have occurred so far. And I don't know if I could count on that, I want to put my fate in the hands of people who may have a certain feeling toward me.
But I think we're also putting our fate in our own decisions by following what's there. If it never reaches that point, it never reaches that point. If we don't miss 3 consecutive meetings,
I might have to miss 3 consecutive meetings.
And I'm sure you would have a logical excuse. I mean, if now.
And so
if
we
you did-
determine if it was logical, we're
Well,
the
you know
ones
what I mean.
determine
I
if
was-
it was
That's
what I was
logical.
referring to, if it was, if you said, look, I'm really sick, I'm going through some mental stuff, whatever, I think we would all understand.
Maybe,
I
but
don't
if
know
it's
if I
somebody
agree.
that we kind of like would maybe want to get off, maybe we wouldn't fully understand their reasoning or excuse. I mean, we're putting it in hands that I'm not comfortable with, to leaving that up to these other people to decide. I'm not really I'm comfortable with the voters. I'm comfortable with this. If this is a charter change that the people vote on, you'd never hear me say another word about it because they voted on it. I just don't like us voting on things like that. Is where I'm coming from on that.
Yeah.
So I have a question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I had a question, maybe the attorney could help answer this, but the Harrison County Board of Education, they get paid by meeting. If they don't show up to a meeting, they don't get paid for the meeting.
That's fine.
Is there any way that perhaps that could be changed to where if we don't show up to a meeting, we just won't get paid for it?
I think you can do that. You can just pass an ordinance saying what your salary is to begin with.
But we also have
I
health.
actually think the water board does it too.
Yeah. I mean, because this is just
If you call in, are you then
Does calling in
Present.
count?
We've passed the ability to do the remote access, or nothing stops us from doing that.
Okay.
And also, if I may add, what Councilman Hyman is trying to do is very similar to what, he's trying to put an objective standard on this, because you already have, anybody can be removed for official misconduct, neglected duty, or incompetence, or for any of these causes. So I think all he's trying to do is put some definable number on that neglected duty. And the process is that there's a resolution done, and then it goes before a 3-judge panel for a circuit judge to remove them. This council would not have power to remove anybody. All they could do is refer it to be removed by a 3-judge panel. And then they'd have to carry out and prove that by clear and convincing evidence. That's what he's talking about on 667. So from the perspective of how it is, the general idea of this is already in state code and you're already subject to it. It's just a matter of right now, what's neglected duty? That's something that would have to be established and discussed, but you already somewhat have that at play.
Was this kind of what happened several years back with the council members? Was this the same scenario?
When that was done, the removal was tried done just by council itself. That was the problem.
They tried to remove by council.
Correct, and I don't think this ordinance was trying to remove by council, it was trying to trigger the process by council, but you can do that by the prosecuting attorney can do it, or petition by qualified voters can do it as well.
Because I remember that one cost the city several thousands of dollars by what they did. If I'm correct, that council person won a judgment for them trying to do that. Is that correct?
That's what I recall before. That's what I recall it occurred. But again, that's not what's being done here, because that wasn't what was done in that situation. That was solely based upon council made that decision based upon a charter section of the conviction of moral crimes, whatever that was. But that's not what's being done here. I think this is going through West Virginia Code 667, basically. All it's trying to do is try to define what I was saying is collective duty. This is what it's trying to do.
I'm okay. I mean, I've never missed 3 consecutive meetings in my whole time on here. Only when I had COVID and I was off for several months with that. And I guess with that, if we provide a doctor's excuse, would that qualify? Even though I wasn't in the hospital at that point, I still was under oxygen and I couldn't leave the house for several months after I got out of the hospital. Would that excuse and not penalize me
I
for
think your
that?
doctor would know if you're on oxygen.
Huh?
I think your doctor would know if you're on oxygen.
You wouldn't know,
Your
though.
doctor.
You're the one who's going to be taking me out.
Your doctor wouldn't.
Well, I think what we'd have to do is try to see how
All right.
the Supreme Court previously defined neglected duty. I don't think you can redefine the state legislature has said neglected duty is grounds to remove somebody. What is neglected duty? And sitting here, I can't tell you that without looking at the cases. Now, what I think Councilman Hyman's just trying to do is try to say, in our viewpoint, this would be an example of neglected duty. However, you can structure it however you want. I think that would be evidence of neglected duty if you didn't fall. So I don't think you necessarily provide it. I think what you're trying to do is provide, this is an example of what we, the council, believe to be neglected duty. So you can write it in however you want. You know, if you believe that long-term hospitalization is not neglected duty, is reasonable and excusable, you can indicate that.
But it would be a judicial officer, right? Or a panel that would determine what the outcome of
For
what
the
that
ultimate-
neglected
For the ultimate
duty is.
neglected duty.
Yeah.
I guess what I would see this as is however you wrote it would be your beginning perspective, whether or not the council was gonna make that initial determination that we, council, believe there was neglected duty. And if someone brought forth and said, I want to do Mr. Worth's neglected duty, I want to remove him, so, you know, Councilman Worth could say, well, you know, I don't think I have neglected duty. If we're in the council, the charter, it says, you know, I was struck by a car, I was in rehab, and all these other issues. So I think that's where that goes. But then you would make that argument again, assuming that passed over your objection, you make that argument again for your judicial. And, but I think it's all you're trying to do is define what neglected duty is.
And that's open discussion. I mean,
That's very subjective.
well, that's what we're here to hash out.
If I can say something, I mean, the way I'm reading this, tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, if you're on vacation, you're on vacation. You're entitled to vacation. That's an excused absence.
I believe so.
And, you know, if you
What
have
if you're on
surgery-
vacation for 3 consecutive meetings?
Yeah, I mean, if you're taking three weeks vacation, you don't
Nice
belong
vacation.
here anyway.
It's
3
only,
weeks vacation.
you
But I'm
know,
saying, you know, I mean, this includes vacations, surgeries, deaths, correct?
And we can amend it to put whatever we want in there. That's why I brought it to council, you know. Obviously, this isn't going to appear on agenda, you know, without me telling anybody. I mean, so, I mean, that's,
Well, I mean, you know, he's missed 3, I've missed 3 consecutive meetings. But
and I think in both of those circumstances where there was, you know, circumstances beyond your control. I mean, I don't think anything has happened up here where anybody could say, you know, it's a neglected duty. I'm just concerned about moving forward. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you know, I just want to make sure we have the opportunity. I mean, and people can have a fair approach to it as well.
I just don't like my determination of that being in some of the people on this council's hands.
And then that would go straight to, as Mr. Marsh mentioned, a 3-court panel over across the street.
And who pays for that for me?
That's something we can look into. I mean,
You're getting into, you know,
and I would totally understand it more if we had data to back it up that this has been happening. Like I said, I'd only go, and I was around council for a long time, and I've never noticed. Jimmy, you've been on how many years?
9.5.
Huh?
9.5.
In your 9.5 years, has this ever even become close to a problem where somebody's missing and just
Not unless they had reasonable
a reason to?
excuse.
Yeah.
You know.
I haven't seen
but
the need.
at this point, there's literally nothing stopping somebody from doing that, is what I'm saying.
You're thinking maybe the next.
With the exception of recall, which we know the process. We've all read it 100 million times. So, you know, I think we know that the process of recalling somebody up here is a lot of work. And if you're not, you know, it may not be attainable either. It's still got to go in front of the voters.
I think
So-
it would have to be something major to do the recall, and absolutely. But there is that option available to the citizens of Clarksburg if they feel we're not representing their needs, and then they can definitely. Yeah, it would take a lot, and it has to take a lot of work. It shouldn't be an easy process to remove somebody. It should be a lengthy process.
Even if somebody says they're not going to show up here for 6 months, I mean, just not show up, not call anybody, not contact anybody. I mean,
Then
not
they
return
need
anybody's phone calls
recall.
or anything.
I don't think they'd have trouble getting a recall if that was the case.
I think you would have to be up here supporting it and moving, you know, trying to move it. You know, where's this guy at? You know, this guy's been gone for, you know, I don't know. That's just how I feel about it, and that's why I put it together.
council member, I mean, I think in your hypothetical situation, where you had somebody who didn't appear after the election or didn't appear for 6 months, you all can move already under 667 and do that. I don't think you need that standard. You just argue your neglected duty there.
And we could do that, or it's already in place to do that?
You all could, the way I view it, you could bring it forth right now, under 667, and argue that somebody had neglected duty. Now, you have no standard of how you judge that. And I don't think you have any grounds for that, but in that hypothetical situation you have, which is, someone got elected, they come to one meeting, we don't see them again for 6 months. I think you have a pretty good, structure on that to go, well, there's neglected duty, let's move forward. So you can already do that, you don't need any further action.
But if it should go across the street and there's that three judge panel or 3-4 panel, then, they could easily say, well, there's no stipulations. There's nothing that says that I can't do that.
It becomes more subjective already from the beginning.
Well, I think it's intended in the statute that you have neglected duty, and we can try to nail that down more if you want. But I think it's clear from the statute that the legislature intended you to carry out your obligations. And again, I agree with you. It's not clear what those obligations are, but at certain points, it's the same thing you do with, think about if you're going to terminate an employee who's tardy. What would you do? Well, you start writing them up and do these things and build your case to establish why they were tardy. Then when you terminate them for cause. And that's theoretical, hypothetical situation. I presume that we would reach out to that person and say, are you coming to this meeting? You need to come to this meeting. You need to do this. So you have all these situations. I don't think you just do it out of the blue one day.
I don't foresee that happening either. I mean, so.
And I think at the end of the day too, if the Harrison County School Board, if you're a school board member, you don't show up to a meeting, you just don't get paid for that meeting. I think that would probably be an easier route to go down than what it would be.
We get insurance benefits for a stipend as well. So how do you put that in there? How do you factor that in?
That'd be something I think we would have to explore.
You just get your insurance taken away, Jerry.
I get that, but how can you, it's not based on per meeting. You get paid per meeting, a monetary amount.
And again, there's nothing that says that we can do that. Until there's language in our codified ordinances, there's no outlet with the exception of State Code 667, and then we have to prove it in court that they were neglecting their duty.
And this prevents us from just randomly asking for evaluations on employees too, right? We can that's kind of subjective. So this right here puts language in there that we should know to follow instead of just randomly come up with evaluations or things like that.
Is that right, Jerry?
Yeah, right?
So we can't randomly ask for evaluation?
We shouldn't, right? We should have some guidelines to go by and reasons why we do it.
We should do a lot of things we don't.
Yeah, there's a lot of
because
things.
we're always reactive.
Here's
So
a good
proactive.
We should do. There's a lot of things we should do.
Let's just move on. We've heard enough of this discussion, I would say. What's your intent, and you want this to be?
Well, as long as it checks out with Marcia, I'm okay with putting it on the agenda. I think anything I do propose is going to come in front of council in a work session. So, I know.
Even as vague as it is, Richard, without defining what your neglect of duty is.
No, it clearly states in C&D what the neglect of duty is.
I think it could be cleaned up to comport with 667, and you all can decide what you think is neglected duty. I think you can, what your evidence is of what neglected duty is, and how you think that falls in there.
So you
can do it. I think it's the way it's written. We can't do it quite yet, but I think it can be modified to do that, to put over the ordinance.
Sounds good.
Because I will note Huntington does have a similar statute, so theirs is much more lenient. It's 40% or more of meetings in a year. So you're talking, 40% of
14 or so.
Less than that.
Well, that
Maybe
would
about 10.
12. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Okay, so yeah, 12 would be 50%. I got you. Okay, sorry about that.
Well, of course, that's never necessarily been a challenge, but it's been in place since 1980.
So with this, we are only talking about 24 council meetings a year, correct?
Well, you can write it however you would like on I mean, it may make sense from 3 consecutive regular meetings. It may make sense to do some other mechanism on there. We can look at that.
Well, then I guess just, look on that and, see what you come up with and.
I'll review it in light of the collective meeting language and see if there's anything that's more structured on that we can look at.
Okay. You good?
Yep, I'm good.
All right, we'll go back, on the agenda. We'll go back to number one. Is everybody, here for the, discussion regarding the brew pub?
Yes.
Okay,
So we have a few documents, passed out to everybody there to review. Would like to clarify there, are some confidential numbers and some proprietary information within the documents. So if there's any question on any of the numbers, we've got a copy ourselves if you want to just reference the page and the line item, being streamed publicly, there's concern about any type of competition, gaining information of, existing operations. So we'll just, if you got a question, reference page, line item, ask a question there and we can try to address it and answer best we can. And with it being, some of us had confidential and proprietary, in the discussion, in the meeting, I was able to walk around and, collect and, pick up the information there. So.
that's a good idea.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
So on the first page right here is basically the overview of the first year. At the top, very top section right there is the assets, is a lot of the expenses and leasehold improvements, equipment, furnitures and fixtures that's going to be invested right here in the facility in downtown Clarksburg. Next section down from it, is listing out, operating capital, projected expenses within that first year, get the business started up and going right there. And the total of the two sections is that initial year one investment to downtown. You can see the total at the bottom is just a hair over $1 million is what the investment's going to be for the first year. Third section down is the equity positions that would be throughout there. On the third one down on the equity position, there is a typo there where it says city. That's actually a state training program to be able to train employees. So that is a small typo there, but the other three are accurate. Then I'll give you guys a little time to review it there. If anyone had any questions on the first page or. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So that's first year operations. Phase one of the project will occur in the first year. There is 2 other phases for the project that would occur in subsequent years. But phase one would solely be within the first year. Outside of this right here, as far as getting set up, getting operating, being opened, we do have a tentative lease ready for execution on the facility. We would be wanting to execute that as soon as possible. Once we hear the determination from the city on the requests that have been made, then we're going to be submitting for the TTB applications for the alcohol to be able to sell on site, be able to manufacture on site. Those best case scenario, 10 to 12 weeks, average 4 to 6 months. Ideally, we like to have this place open for summer, for the summer season.
The construction build out of it, roughly a 60-day build. So the licensing part of the project is far longer than what the build time for the project is. That's what we're trying to get ahead of.
I have a question. Are you an investor?
Yes. See the discrepancy between page 2 and 3?
2 and 3?
Yeah. Yeah, I am listed there on page 3. 2, page 3 wasn't updated, but yes, I am part of the business. So on the second page right there is some of the assumptions for the business. As far as the operating hours is listed there, the staff count, it does have the potential for upwards of 10 jobs there for the facility. When taking in the bar, kitchen, and the brewery aspects. And that's, so the hours and the employment assumptions are just based for the phase 1 for the initial year, which is going to be occupying just the first floor, the ground level of the building. There is, additional roughly 17,000 more square footage in the building for the phase 2 and 3 expansions. Both those expansions would come with additional employees needed for the facility. And then below the employee count does list out, phase 1, and it does list out phase 2 and then phase 3 as far as the usage for the facility. Any questions for page 2?
I have a question. The hours that you guys mentioned, is
Yes.
that something you've always done other places, or is it something that you feel like weekday evenings won't be worth it? I mean, what do you?
The first year, probably more limited until we can build up the retail. Our current location, we're open 5 days a week, generally lunch through 9 p.m. We were just trying to look at the area here, at least on the weekdays, not having a whole lot probably during the day. So those hours could increase, but doing a 7-day available, we would catch week with work people and weekends.
So you're open to weekday evenings in the future if business. Okay.
Yeah, and having the 7-day schedule right there, several of you I believe is familiar with breweries. Breweries inherently become a destination facility. So there are destinations for, not just local citizens and to have local commerce, but they generate a draw from outside and outlying areas to come into the facilities. So being there 7 days to try to accommodate those schedules, what to start out with. The limited hours is there to be able to target in, the desired hours, and then see where demand would be to expand those hours, outside of what's there. Everyone had a chance to review page 2. Okay. So on the third page right there, it's talking about the pricing breakdown for the lunch service. It's a reiteration of the staff count, but it also has a breakdown of the retail sales on site, compared to wholesale distribution sales. The majority would be consumed on site. These are our projections, and with the limited hours starting out, all of these numbers can go up, can increase, once we're able to expand hours and identify days and times that are more desired and more demandable for other areas. And then off to the right side of that third page right there is the projection amount, highlighted in yellow, of the direct city sales tax would be generated by these preliminary sales figures. And we're trying to be, with limited hours, with limited times, and trying to be conservative to not over project for what sales could do or could be. So we feel this is a pretty good floor for it that could rise and could go up. And then the packet in behind, it's a little bit of a lengthy read. Appreciate going through, scanning through it. It's pretty self-explanatory there of the expansion plan. It talks about the history of Berkeley Springs, talks about the start that Carl and Denise had, a little over 8 years ago. Talks about the success they've had with their existing facility. The big thing that the Clarksburg location is going to be able to provide, not only as a facility in downtown for retail sales for the restaurant brew pub, the Clarksburg facility has a space and has a room for expansion, but initially it has a space and room for a 10-barrel brew system. Currently, in Berkeley, there's a 3-barrel system that Carl and Denise is utilizing. The 10-barrel system is going to be able to help meet demand. Carl, he can tell you here himself, there's times of the year where the 3-barrel system just can't keep up with the on-site sales and demand that they have over in Berkeley Springs. That's why, the assumptions are showing, the majority, a little over 5-barrel of the system being dedicated to on-site sales here, because there's a larger population base here. And if they had more than a 3-barrel system over there, they could have serviced the crowd that's over there. The extra 5-barrel to take up to a 10-barrel system is just to help meet distribution. They've had distribution demands last several years over there in Berkeley Springs that they haven't been able to meet because they haven't been able to produce enough. So that's been the need for a desire to start here with the 10-barrel system, is to be able to meet the realistic expectations that they're seeing in their existing facility, as well as to be able to meet the distribution expectations that their current system has not been able to keep up with. And on the 6th page in this packet, it does give a limited outline of some of the menu items, some of the type of cuisine that's going to be offered in the restaurant. It does go on to talk about the marketing plans that they have with it, between social media, between structuring the facility to be a destination for the community, not just a typical bar setting. It would be a community destination. I know whenever we was looking through the building earlier today, Carl and I identified the ideal spot to have a little arcade game room there, just to be more kid friendly in the facility. That's controlled, but not in the immediate presence of the bar area. It's going to be a destination. It's going to be a sight to see. Being able to see the brewery operations, see the tanks, see the production, where it's made. Seeing the aesthetics of the bar, the tanks behind the bar. Having a party room, event room right there on site with an overhead projector. It has a drop-down projection screen that could not only be used for birthdays, for small receptions and events, but could also be used for conferences and meetings. Currently, I don't believe there's a place downtown that, aside from the Morris, that could be used for conferences and meetings for the general public. And being just down the street from the courthouse, you're going to have a large draw and a big attraction from professionals, coming and doing business at the courthouse, that would be happy to, schedule a private meeting room there where they could do a presentation or they could review documents and plans, while having a meal. And, to the latter part of it, they could circle back at the end of the day and celebrate if it was a good day, and console themselves if it wasn't a successful day. It has a lot of potential, a lot of good upsides for the area and for the community. Any questions over the expansion plan?
So this place will not sell liquor per se?
Yes, it will.
It will?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay, because I see beer retail, beer wholesale, and food sales, but I don't see.
It will be called, it will be a private club, we'll have a private club license, we'll be able to sell liquor.
I include that in the other.
In the other category,
I'm sorry?
Generally, yeah, generally.
the other category is where the liquor is listed in.
Yeah, generally in a brew pub, we encourage them to consume anything that we make on premise over anything else. So at our current place, we do beer cocktails, so there's still some beer in it. We'll carry wine, but that's only as a last resort if we can't get you to drink anything that we make. So it's relatively very a small amount in comparison to the beer sales.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So you guys would be the managing,
Absolutely.
Yes.
what, and the Berkeley Springs location would still remain
Yeah.
open?
It'll still remain open, yeah. Berkeley Springs will be Berkeley Springs Brewing, this will be a completely different thing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, different entity altogether, underneath the same business umbrella, it's just different entity.
We could certainly have beer from Clarksburg in Berkeley Springs and Berkeley Springs beer in Clarksburg.
Okay.
And that's a really good point, is that the name, the beer itself can work as a great marketing, right? So if we sold beer to Berkeley Springs, people in Berkeley Springs go, oh, there's a brewery in Clarksburg? Maybe we ought to go there. Let's go check that one out, right? So it becomes the distribution becomes a big marketing tool, because the money, overall, you make a lot more money in retail. But having the beer out in distribution gets the name out there. And oftentimes, that's what has brought people to our pub, is they got our beer somewhere through our distributor, and they said, oh, well, let's go check this place out. So it does help with the destination factor. Yeah. We don't want to be solely a manufacturing brewery doing only, wholesale. That's not the intent.
So you will be bottling or canning beer and under your private label, under your label? Okay.
And you do that currently in Berkeley Springs?
Yes.
Where are you located in Berkeley Springs?
We're on the Eastern Panhandle, of course, right across from Cool Font Resort, right off Cold Run Valley Road.
So you're not right on the main dragon
Right.
of Berkeley Springs?
Right.
Okay.
No,
So I just
on the
recently went there.
backside, on the back of that ridge that runs through the right side of Berkeley Springs.
Now, what's your biggest sellers, like 6 packs of 12-ounce cans, or what do you do mostly?
6 packs,
Right, well,
12 ounce.
You mean in volume?
Yeah. so
Yeah,
six-
kind of your biggest items that you sell.
Well, draft, yeah, tap, in-house.
In-house,
Right.
but as far as retail,
Retail, yeah, a lot of cans. So that has shifted also from, the growler thing
right.
was the big deal. COVID put a little bit of a halt on that, and when, during COVID, everything had to be canned, so we went to canning, and things like that has never really changed, so, that we still sell a small amount of growler fills, but generally people are more inclined to take it to go in cans.
Now, do you also retail, or would you go into stores to sell your product? Are you in retail now in Berkeley?
We
like-
do self-distribute in Morgan County. We have a lot in almost all the rest of the counties within the state of West Virginia to a distributor. As he was stating, we're not big enough to really handle the volume that they're asking for. At peak summertime, we have 20 taps. We have a 3-barrel system. We have 9 tanks. We struggle to keep up with our 20 tap selection, much less trying to put beer out to the wholesale market. So this location would actually give us the ability to develop.
To do more retail?
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's your goal.
10-barrel system now, clarification, the barrel was 31 gallons. And a 10-barrel system is just basically conservative. Depending on the type of system that I run across as I'm shopping, it could be a 15-barrel system. We're trying to do this in 5-barrel increments so that we can purchase 5-barrel tanks, 10-barrel tanks, 15-barrel tanks, and incrementally fill them that way.
basically what we'd like to be able to do with the volume here is to be able to grab more of the market share, not only here in West Virginia, but in surrounding states as well. We had distribution in Maryland. We canceled that agreement with those two distributors and we took it back under our own umbrella because we simply couldn't handle their demand. And so, this is the next step, next portion of evolution of our business is to be able to grow into something much more regional. Originally, our game plan was to be a regional brewery in the 4-state region. The laws in West Virginia are not conducive to that. They will not allow contract brewing in West Virginia, which is exactly what we would be. So that kind of put the kibosh on that business plan. We've had to pull it back in-house and try to do as much as we can in-house. We're just not able to grow in Berkeley Springs. If you haven't been to Berkeley Springs, there's really nowhere else to put a facility such as what we're trying to build in Berkeley Springs. There's no buildings available. So this would be a building that would give us the ability to do just about everything.
Okay. How did Clarksburg pop up on your radar?
Bob Fishno came into our pub one day to promote his West Virginia fruit and berry wines, which we had never heard of. We had never heard of Clarksburg. Okay, so he comes in and he says, "Hey, I have this great wine here. I see you have a little pub. Would you like to try this? I'd love to see you guys carry this wine in here." And we tasted it and really liked it, and therefore started ordering it through a distributor. And he says, what do you, talk to me. So we told him our little story, and he says, "I know a place where you should put a brewery." And he told us about Clarksburg, invited us to come down. I think the first time we came down there, I think we stayed at Bob and Becky's house. And we started looking around, and then introduced us to Chris, and then, started looking at some of the buildings downtown. This has been, how long has it been now? Year and a half?
It's actually been over 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time that we've been thinking about this, talking about this, and then just had Chris just called us up and he says, "Hey, I think I have a perfect building for you."
Yeah, initially, as most of our council know, I've got the golf building. So initially, we looked through the golf, did full architectural drawings. It was going to be occupying the full basement, the ground floor, and the full second floor. It should have been just shy of 18,000 square feet for the operations. But unfortunately, because of the layout of the golf and having it on 3 different floor levels, the cost of construction put that startup year cost a little over double because of the construction cost. And ultimately, the project just wasn't feasible. So we stayed friends, talked back and forth, and then
Berkeley Springs.
Yep, made visits out to Berkeley Springs, and their facility over there is a true testament to a brewery as a destination facility. Because you leave the main drag, you go to a 2-lane, you jump off the 2-lane to a 1-lane, you jump off the 1-lane onto a gravel road, and then you get to their facility out there in the middle of the woods, with no other buildings or structures around it. And toward the very end, you're wondering, am I lost? And then you come out to this clearing, and then there's a huge parking lot, where you've got to park and walk about 100 yards into the building because, well, it's just packed and parked full of vehicles between there and the building. And then you walk in and there's, the place they have with the stage with the live music. And I believe this last time we went over, had trivia over there. It's wall to wall. And next to your existing place, you guys have the double bar layout. Where there's the main primary bar with the taps and then a second standing bar, on behind that, just to be able to have the occupancy of everybody that comes to that facility. So it true testament that breweries are destination facilities. So last fall, whenever I became appraised that the building here on Main Street had changed ownership, and I'd known the previous owners as well as the current owner, and I knew the business minds of both of them, and the current owner is a lot more aggressive, whereas the previous was looking more toward retirement, I reached out to the current owner and I said, well, what's your plans? What's your thoughts of it? He didn't have anything at the moment. He said, it's a good deal, and I want to see something good done with Clarksburg, with downtown. So I immediately went out, did a walkthrough of the building, looked at it, analyzed it. In my experience, knowledge in construction, I immediately seen the cost hurdles that we faced in my building was not there for that building. And, called them both up and said, hey, I think I found the perfect place for you. Talked to the owner about, hey, I think I have the perfect tenant for you. Originally it started out, I was gonna get a couple cases of free beer for the connection, and the owner's gonna take me out to dinner, and then I was gonna step away from it. Since then, I've became a larger part of the project and more involved with it, and that has borne the position of me taking an ownership stake in with this location is just by having the larger role with it. But ultimately, it's this facility is born out of their desire to expand and being able to recognize the need for expansion and the need to meet previous distribution demands that they've had, as well as seeing what a brewery can do in a small area, in a small community, and the destination it can become. Coupled with, my passion for wanting to see downtown, be a thriving, successful place and try to help bring businesses into downtown, whether it's in my building or in someone else's building, that would bring growth and bring good positivity to downtown. And this facility, I know a few of you today was able to do a walkthrough with us of the facility, to see the grandeur of it, to see the layout of it, being able to see the operation, the tanks, from the main dining area, being able to have a corporate meeting room, a large-scale kitchen, large-scale restrooms. Restrooms are for multiple individuals. They're not single occupants. It's got large facilities there. The layout is truly impressive. As far as parking, there's 150 parking spaces directly behind the building. There's a full Main Street parking. There's Jackson Square parking. There's parking adjacent to it, parking behind MVB. There's parking in downtown where there could be events, with multiple hundred people, especially with Orpheum Park across the street, where several hundred people could be coming to and from this facility. And because there's the expected demand for all that parking, that's one of the things that brought us to the request of the 4 parking spaces in front of it, either being able to controlled by us like the previous owners had control of, or being converted over to a loading zone, because product does come in via tractor trailer. Cans does come in, empty cans comes in via tractor trailer. And with the layout of Washington Street, it's just not practical for tractor trailers to navigate back to Washington on a regular basis. Along with, the bar menu, the food menu that they have in Berkeley is, drastically popular over there. The projected menu here, I feel, would be popular, and a big traction in Clarksburg. And one thing we all seen during COVID was the rise of DoorDash, the rise of Uber Eats, of having that service. So being able to have that loading zone in front of the building where services like that, can come in, pick up and go, to be able to sustain those services, is a desired must, just to help with boosting the retail sales as well as service to the community. And as clearly outlined there, I believe on the 3rd page with the projected retail sales, the retail tax basis the city would be collecting on this is substantially larger at a 1% basis than the 0.4% basis of B&O that retail or other, which would be office operations, would generate for the city. So the building's currently laid out as an office building. Its previous use was an office building and future use be an office building. This construction and this group would be changing the use of that facility to make it a retail facility, to make it a destination facility that's going to drive that larger sales tax. and the sales tax is at that larger percentage. And that's where we is, asking for the B&O waiver, on that initial 10-year period, because the tentative lease deal is for a 10-year commitment on the facility, committing to 10 years of operations out of that facility, and that would be 10 years worth of potential sales tax for the city, at more than double the rate of what the B&O tax would be for the standard operations that would occur at that facility in other circumstances. So the city would have a net gain of, just over 0.5% on a tax gain.
Is that
It would
in,
be occupied.
is that in your plan? Did you, the B&O tax break that you asked for, is it in there? I didn't see it.
That was one of the 3 requests that we submitted.
I mean, is
originally.
it in?
The 3 requests are not
No,
listed.
it's only
in
1
these
year
documents.
breakdown, so 1 year they'd get 100% anyways.
But I'm asking for what they've requested. Is it in writing here? I don't
It
see
is not in writing in the documents in front of you. It has been previously requested in writing to the city manager. So the city does have the full request there.
The 10-year
In writing.
request that you're speaking of is in writing, but he has it then. Because I haven't seen it in writing at all. I wanted to
Okay.
see what the 10-year request was in writing. And that also, you said like parking for, but
The 4 spaces.
we went from just that to possibly a loading zone in front is what your request is now?
So if the desire to control the 4 spaces would essentially be utilize them as a loading zone, and to be able to utilize them during construction. Ultimately through discussions with city staff, whether it's a control of the 4 spaces or if it's removing the spaces and installing the white striping there, red letters to designate that area as a loading zone area, either one of them suffices fills the same need for us, one way or another. So whichever way the city would decide, whether it designates a loading zone, or to assign control of the spaces to us, either way, it fills the same purpose. We need to have the space for a full tractor trailer to be able to pull off park, be able to unload pallets, and hopefully one day to be able to reload large scale distribution. We need a place for the DoorDash, for the Uber Eats, to be able to pull up, jump out, come in, get their items, head out. And with larger events, with Orpheum Park growing, with concerts, with things going on to Robinson, with everything growing in the city, we're hoping that the day will come where a valet service will be needed, to where the general public can pull right up to the front doors, have a valet take their vehicle, take it around back and park it, take it to Jackson Square and park it for them, or even the city parking garage. Park the vehicles over there, let the folks walk right inside. That loading zone, or the control of these parking spaces would all suffice that.
Well, I'd like to go on record. I'm 100% behind this. I think that if we have these folks that are willing to invest $1 million in downtown Clarksburg, I think that, we should definitely try to accommodate their needs.
And I think a company coming here willing to lease 26,000 square foot is something that's going to be very tough for us to come by. I don't know when the last time a company has done that. We know of a few that's left that's occupied that much space, but I don't know the last time we brought in a company that much willing to lease that much. 10-year plan, I mean, that's a big commitment.
I have to agree with Mr. Malfajoe. I'm 100% behind this. I was a little bit sketchy on private parking spaces because I'm not sure how that could work out and it would make a lot of people mad, but loading zone sounds a lot easier to achieve.
And I'm 100% behind it too. I just have a few questions, maybe to our city manager or attorney and staff when it comes to these 3 specific asks. The first one is the B&O, instead of tax credit for 10 years. And maybe our attorney might be able to answer this question. Is that something that the council can do, or what's the process in that?
Other cities have done it that way. I haven't seen anybody that just sit there. Your biggest hurdle is gonna be for one company.
Okay.
That's what we have to look at, is I guess, I'm not aware, and Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen the veto tax waive for one company. Everything else is set up. Of course, it's hard to make that determination, because I think they just do one-offs on that. But everything else, because Ken put together a list of veto tax credits in some major cities, and most of them don't go out beyond 5 years.
I mean, is that something that a city council can do for one? Okay.
I don't have the answer.
Well, I would say that I wouldn't want to do it just for one business. I mean, you got to be fair and you got to think about the whole city. If you do a B&O tax incentive plan, I think you do it for the central business district as a whole. To single out one business, I think you start running into issues. But I'm in favor of looking at it. And I want to commend Kim for the package she put out. If you guys have a chance to look at it. The one who went 10 years, they had to, and I found it interesting, they had to create over 100 jobs in order to get that kind of break for 10 years.
Yeah,
it wasn't just, and that was pretty, but again, at 10 years, the tax incentive was only 10%. You know, they didn't waive taxes free for 10 years. So this is something for us to look at, but I personally wouldn't want to single out one business and give that. If you do that, I mean, what do you do with the Kim Harvey down the street here who's put $1 million into her building and she doesn't get that? Was she going to be up here saying, and I would expect her to come up here saying that. So if we single out, we're going to open ourselves up to a lot of scrutiny. So I think when we look at this, we got to look at the total city and not just one business.
A large component of this facility is going to be manufacturing. While it's a brewery, it does classify as a manufacturing facility. And with a 10-year commitment, $1 million, investment, and occupying 26,000 square feet, and also generating sales tax. It's changing the use group of the facility that before wasn't generating sales tax, and in the current market, the typical tenant for when it generates sales tax. So I think there's a lot of metrics there to where the city would ultimately be at a net tax gain by this facility operating in the city and waiving the B&O, as opposed to not waiving the B&O, the facility having to locate somewhere else and a typical use group coming into that facility or the facility continuing to sit vacant. So I think there's several key metrics right there that, that ultimately if 2, 3, or 4 businesses want to come locate in the city, change the use group of a building that wouldn't generate sales tax over to one that would generate, make a substantial long-term investment in a 26,000 square foot plus facility that resulted in net gain of taxes for the city. I don't see why the city wouldn't want to do as many of those as was one to come knock on your doors to do.
I think that's actually a really good way to approach it.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, I mean, like you're saying, when you're converting, say, the Empire Bank building, for instance, if somebody were to go and convert that to a restaurant or retail, they could offer the same thing.
You're saying don't do it up front, just do it on an individual basis?
No, I'm saying you could do it just like that.
With parameters
Change it if you're changing the use of the building like that. Because, I mean, he makes a very good point that, this wouldn't make any sense if we didn't have the 1%. If that ever went away, then we'd look pretty dumb. But with the 1%, I mean, you're taking a building that's not giving us anything. And, we're making more off of it than we would under normal circumstances if we didn't have that.
And the building's been vacant for a while. How long's that building been vacant? I mean, it's been
close to a decade, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm all in favor of the project. Absolutely. This is a great thing. Mr. Genlozzi's Orpheum Theater Orpheum Theater, I'm old school, but Orpheum Park would generate, this would play off each other and would be a great asset to downtown. I just don't want to pigeonhole us in other places that are have made an investment. Let's look across the bridge there at the $1 million project that the POP has just invested. And we're not, we got to consider that. I mean, that's a venue that's bringing hundreds of people. Their first event had 350 people. We can't exclude them from having a B&O tax break too. I just want to be fair, and I don't want to say, we're just doing it for one business and we're not doing it for all. We just got to keep our options open, that we got to look at these other folks too. And it's a great project. There's no question whatever we can do. And I think I want to commend Kim on record here, what she put together. At least it does give us something to look at and to maybe create something good for Clarksburg. And I want more business in all the buildings, and let's create some kind of new tax break for these businesses, and but let's do it collectively and not on an individual basis. Is my point.
Well, and the idea of transfer, when you're changing one from office space to retail, would affect a lot of buildings too. I mean, that would be like the ground floor of the Chase building, the Empire. I mean, Chris's building. That sounds like a good idea to me.
Open up for all those. Yes, absolutely. Not just one is all I'm saying. If we do create this,
that would actually end up affecting Gore too. I mean, if they had spaces over there that were like
retail,
the big building over there that's the Yellow Pages building, if they put some kind of retail in there, it would affect them too.
This place is open 7 days a week. We don't have any other business downtown, so we open 7 days a week. That would be huge. That'll help continue to try to build this nightlife back that we used to have. Get people constantly on the sidewalks. It's just net tax gain, I think, over 10 years, and a net, for our downtown, I think it's just
this structure would propose a net tax gain to the city. And it's not a structure we're asking to be specific to us. Mr. Marsh can probably advise you guys better than we can that, setting the parameters, for this would be key and critical for not just us, but for other and multiple businesses to utilize this. And if the city can implement this to where businesses have the ability to, save expense to generate a net tax gain for the city, that's a win-win across the board. That's helping lower businesses' operating expenses, which is, it's not an easy business climate nowadays with managing employees and finding employees. So helping lower that expense helps make businesses more viable. And those businesses that's, proposing and producing a net tax gain to the city is going to help boost, the city revenue. So, this facility hopefully would be just the first of many that could be able to utilize this program to help occupy, underutilized or simply vacant buildings in the city, in a way that would help them with their operating expenses and generate a net tax gain for the city, and help to provide something for the citizens of Clarksburg to go to work at, to live at, to interact with. This is a potential program that could have large productive ripple effects.
And I agree. I agree with what Councilman Keith said too. It's just not for one business. I think if you provide this new incentive, I think we should look into it. It should be a priority to look into it. ASAP. If we could set up a B&O tax structure for people, for businesses, or folks that want to redevelop these buildings into these spaces. That down the road, could really attract investment significantly. I just have one other question, in reference to, I guess this is the whole cart before the horse thing. So I'm going to ask about the cart, and this is where I'm probably going to ask my city manager or maybe someone in code enforcement may know. When businesses come in, they want to redevelop and repurpose buildings. What is the structure? The process in doing that. Does it go through code? Does it have to go through planning and zoning? What is the process, and if you guys can disclose, what is the process? What is the process right now that the Berkeley Springs Brewery has gone through so far?
As far as zoning?
Yeah, so,
Well, I mean,
With,
code and zoning to rehab the place.
so with zoning right there, there is the central business district, I'm correct, Ashley, that provides for multiple use groups within the district. That's why whenever you go down through Main Street, you'll see a restaurant, an accounting firm, a law firm, a retail business, a bank. There are certain parameters that's allotted for multiple businesses within that zone. This brewery facility is already listed, already meets, the central business district zoning requirements. There is a question within our third phase expansion that involves a potential distillery, of whether distillery is considered light manufacturing or light industrial, which isn't currently in the central business district, to where that expansion would have to go through planning and zoning and get a potential zoning amendment before it could take place. However, there is plenty of time to go through that. It's a pretty straightforward process. We don't have any concerns by. It is what it is. It's in place, but it does allow for it. As far as code and changing the use group, whenever you change the use group of a building, you got to bring the building up to current code, standard code. Which includes ingress, egress, ADA facilities, to the fire marshal's point, have sprinklers if necessary, fire alarms if necessary. And also some buildings that would otherwise be grandfathered in, with their existing setups. Whenever you change that use group, you have to bring them up to current standards, which comes at a very large expense. So going back to, the benefit of receiving the B&O tax break for, the efforts of the large expense of having to bring everything up to that current code because of changing that use group is all the more help, because there is great expense in changing that code group, because you're bringing everything current as if it was a brand new building today. I believe I covered the two you asked. I don't recall if you had a third one there.
Well, my question is, where are we at? I mean, and I probably asked my city manager, where are we at in the process right now for your all's initial phase?
So for the initial phase, we've reviewed the facility. We're ready to submit for demo permits to start construction. We're ready to execute the lease on the facility. But we're trying to finalize and massage the full financial pro forma where these incentives would come into play. The incentive of reducing expense for the B&O, being able to know we can accept the deliveries necessary for the business, because if we can't accept full tractor trailers, then we got to pay premium fees to get special delivery times on shorter box trucks, potentially with lift gates. All that comes as a premium, and all that stacks up over the life of the operations. So that's expenses we'd have to take into account for. And as well as the third request with the water usage. Water is a very large usage for the facility, so having a second tap, without the sewer to be able to use for the manufacturing is another key indicator there in the financial performance. Once we, get the decisions on these three requests, whether they be yes or whether they be no, or whether they propose a third option, that can be approved by council, then we can make the decision of, yep, we plug in all this data, it fits the financial model, fits the pro forma, we're going to execute the lease, because the most critical point is a TTB, application for the alcohol, be able to manufacture and be able to sell alcohol on site. That short-term condensed, everything gets green lights, it's a 10 to 12 week process. In all actuality, it's typically a 4 to 6 month process. We can't start that application until we have a lease executed.
I think he's meaning on our part with the code enforcement, like Ashley, can you explain to what, the letter that you would be writing?
Yeah, I've already written one signing letter. There shouldn't be any problem with the group of itself. Phase one, phase one of the work doesn't appear to be a problem at all. It's just the second phase where you got the distillery, warehousing, and that kind of stuff. That's the part that we need to take a look at.
Yeah, so the phase with the distillery, that's far enough down the line that it's no problem to go through the planning and zoning process. The phase one right now, there's, we've essentially got the clear go ahead from code to be able to start the process. And because that TTB application takes so long, the process to permit, apply, and go through code and to get our occupancy permits is within that TTB process. So that's very doable. For us,
We will need a build out plan to review, because plan reviews is first step, and we walked through it today, so we're on the way to helping get that changed.
So is that an architect sealed plan that you will require? Okay.
Yeah.
So in order, before you issue a permit, you have to have that plan. So it would be, and these guys understand that.
If we're changing the use of the building, and the reason we need that, there's multiple uses in that building. Once we get all these other things in there, you got business use, you got mercantile use, you got assembly use, you got hazard use and storage use. So there's a lot of different things to play into it. We
Yeah.
have to do all those areas.
What kind of time frame you guys looking to be able to get the sealed architect drawing to code?
All well within the TTB timeframe. I mean, that's not a tough ask. There's an architect right here close by that's already did previous work in the structure, that already has a CAD on the structure. His schedule, of doing the work, with his workload, is a larger factor than physically doing the work. Changing the drawings on CAD right there is probably a day or two's, amount of work. It's scheduling him in and, working with him previously. He's not that far out on schedule. Designing it, going through the code process, constructing it is not a concern that we have. It's getting the licensing to be able to manufacture, to produce, to be able to open the doors. That's what has the lengthy time frame with it. And in order to submit for the licensing, we have to, submit a copy of release or ownership of the facility, because in this case with the lease, the owner of the facility has to acknowledge in the lease that they're okay with the production of alcohol, the storage of alcohol being on premise, within premise, and that's part of the review process with the TTBs. They have to have acknowledgement the owner is okay with that, and contractually that can take place. So it goes back to, the horse and the cart right there. We don't want to get the cart in front of the horse by executing a 10-year commitment on a 26,000 square foot facility, which doesn't come cheap, unless we know the financial performance of the business is going to meet our expectations, fall right within the targeted area we want to fall within. And that's why we're here today is, with our requests, with our asks, is we need to know what is possible, what is doable, what is not possible, so we can plug that information in, finalize the financial performance of the business to put us in the comfortable spot to execute that lease, to go ahead and submit the application, and then start the build out and construction process. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to wait, spend the expense of architectural, spend the expense of construction, get all that complete, and then come here asking these questions, and then try to get a lease in place, or already have it in place, without knowing the financial performance of the projections. Just trying to use a good business sense.
And the reason why I ask these questions, I support a brew pub here 100%. It's just that sometimes myself as a councilman, I'm not a businessman. I need technical questions answered by our staff to know that the process is going to be done right. We even talked about with in regards to question one, the first ask about the 10-year B&O tax period at 100%. And we came up, just through discussion, came up with some ideas. Now, I don't know how fast, we could, whether we need to go to another work session just to talk about that, or whether that's something that maybe our city attorney could draft an ordinance and then bring it to a work session to see how we feel about it. But that's why, when something comes up like this, I always ask those sort of questions, because I just want to make sure that we don't skip a process when it comes to code or planning and zoning, something this big, because I want it to be successful. Okay. But also at the same time, I've never been my 2 years here on council, I've never experienced quite a request like this that has so many moving parts, and that has to be mitigated by different staff and departments of the city and potentially boards. So that's why I have these questions. So it's not because I don't support it, because I do. It's just that just want to make sure all our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted. That's all.
That's a good point, and the mayor made a good point there earlier about not specifying, a tax break, about, having it where it's structured to be broad, to be able to apply toward multiple individuals. Because if you end up in a situation where you have multiple businesses, such as Carl and Denise's here, that's changing use groups, that's updating building codes, that's generating sales tax dollars in places that wasn't generated before. It's bringing a destination and bringing activity to downtown. That's a win-win-win, it seems, across the board for everyone, for the city, for the businesses, for the citizens, for everybody. So I think that was a very, very good point the mayor made.
Absolutely.
Can our city attorney wants to speak here.
Mr. Lane, and building on what Councilman Keith said, and also you, if you structure it as a B&O tax on the retail, except on the retail, that gets you where you need to go.
On the retail, not on the manufacturing.
That's correct. Because otherwise, you're giving up all your tax income on the manufacturing side. And
Which is what percentage is the manufacturing tax rate or tax rate?
Well, I'm just trying to think about, because you want to put in, you're thinking about these other buildings, how you structure this, and we're talking about Chase Building, we're talking the Empire Building, putting in ideas, restaurant, retail, whatever. You want to do a mixed manufacturing retail establishment. And so how are we going to recoup anything if we give, because the manufacturing side, you're not going to have sales tax on, correct? Yes, so you want sales tax on the manufacturing side, so that side is going to be zero net.
What's going to be manufactured is directly going to the retail sales there, The
Right.
products being manufactured on site,
But I
and
think-
sold on site.
But
What you're wholesaling is what he said.
you're talking long term, so I think you're gonna have an exemption for your manufacturing as you're going to retail. We need to structure that, the stuff that you're retailing for your own sale, flow through, because you're manufacturing it for yourself, for your sale, I think is where you're there. But if you manufacture it and sell it to a third party, you're not collecting sales tax on that, because that's gonna go to somebody else. That's what my concern is. So my question is, can you structure it that you're only getting your B&O tax on your retail? And I understand what you're saying, but you're manufacturing in-house for yourself is one thing. I think that's fine, because you're gonna end up selling it, collecting your 1% on that. I'm concerned about selling it to third parties, and then we can receive nothing from that on our full B&O tax. So if you structure it like that, does it get you there? Where we're giving you exceptions to the retail, with the understanding that if you manufacture for your own use, which I think under the sales tax rules, if you manufacture it and you're giving it to yourself, it's not sales tax. It is what you sell to the end user.
Right.
So does that get you to where you?
Correct, and manufacturing for ourselves is what's going to be sold on site to the end user, so there wouldn't be a net difference between, actually, it wouldn't be sold to ourselves, the same entity that's manufacturing is what's selling it to the
I
end user.
understand, that's what I'm saying, can I limit this?
That's what he's saying. Would you be okay
Can I
paying the
limit
B&O
this
on the
to retail
manufacturer?
sales? And then if in 4 years you start manufacturing, you start selling to other brew pubs, or you start selling to Gomart or whoever else, you're gonna start paying B&O tax on that manufacturer side, because you won't be paying sales tax on that side. That's what I'm trying to get at, because the idea that Councilman Keith has is, well, if we put in, a restaurant or where else, you're getting all that sales tax. I'm trying to think about your streams of income. The city of Clarksburg, right, like or not, wants a piece to generate tax revenue from every dollar you make somehow, which we're doing when you sell, a six-pack to somebody, we're gonna get the sales tax, all right? We've given up the B&O tax on that, okay, that makes sense. But my concern is, you're doing this 10 years, what are we gonna do? And plus, I'm trying to think how to write this too. And I don't think we wanna write it, just say that oh, well, if you put a business downtown, you get 100% B&O tax. I don't think that's what they're thinking up there. I think they're thinking more so to generate and get stuff coming in.
So,
And if I write it and says 100% sales or B&O receipt, then I can put whatever I want. If I put a law office in there, well, that's no sales tax, because professionals don't pay sales tax, and therefore they also lose the B&O either. So that's what my concern is.
so any product manufactured, sold to an unrelated entity, you know, essentially a third-party entity,
Right.
would be subject to B&O.
Yes.
I don't see a problem with
That
that.
would be a
That
compromise.
could be this good middle ground.
Because I'm thinking I could write this, and we could propose it as it's a tax on retail sales. I think you could easily put an exception in there. Any manufacturing that you do for your own purposes is exempt, which would make sense. If you have a craft store, I don't think you would be taxed on the crafts that you make when you sell them to your end user in that store. Okay.
So B&O break, except for, you know, any, unrelated entity sales. So the sales of the.
So any non-tax sales,
Yeah,
right? So if you're selling to a distributor, they don't have to pay taxes.
Or if you're selling to your other group as well. Because at the end of the day, that again, you're ending up, the sales tax from that
Still
is
related
related
to
to Brooklyn Springs, not here. We would be interested, I think this council, and I don't want to put words in front of, but Councilman Keith, and I think Councilman Rivera indicated, we're interested in, you know, they'd be interested in giving you the B&O tax break if you're generating dollars that are being spent downtown. And so if I come in and I buy a six-pack, or I have a drink, whatever, I spend my money here in downtown, but if you make that same six-pack and send it to Brooklyn Springs, you haven't generated money downtown. That makes sense?
makes sense.
Yeah, that's, Richard, you're 100% right. That's,
And the other question I have is, you're not asking for a B&O tax break for your subs or your GC, you're not being the GC on this, right?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're just dealing with the retail side of things. Okay.
I got a question for staff, maybe John can answer or code. How does the process of leasing or designating parking zones actually work for the city? Does that go to the parking authority? Does that go to the street authority? I mean, how does that, and aren't those organizations kind of not meeting?
Finance could probably give you a better idea of the actual leasing procedure, but it's a standardized rate. They were able to establish what would be close to $1,000 a year per space. It's not the parking authority, because the parking authority doesn't deal with on-street parking. It deals with our off-street parking facilities.
Okay.
So I believe it comes back to you as being a right-of-way issue. I think Mr. Marsh probably.
Wouldn't have biometric.
Yeah. It is generally handled through finance.
The on-street parking, yeah, that's handled through finance currently. And we looked, those parking spots, just to give an idea, Mountain State Law is paying around $110 a month for their two spots over here. I can't remember how many spots MVP has. I don't know if they have 2 or 3. They're paying $975 a quarter. So that's kind of prospectively what you're giving up by changing this to a loading zone. Around $100 per spot per month. From not easy to.
now, that would be strictly used as a loading zone. It wouldn't be designated for the brew pub itself, correct?
I think that's the discussion we're having. The initial thought point is, in the way it's been dealt with so far is the loading zones are not specific to, and the ordinances, you can't designate a loading zone specific to a certain company.
Right.
So you either have to enter into a lease agreement with them, or they lease it themselves, and for whatever amount you do that with, or the loading zone, which again would just be your general.
And there's,
And you probably need a loading zone, another loading zone on Main Street anyway.
then there's no process for council to do that. Like you said, that would go straight to finance, and that's who would handle that. So there's no really negotiation in that.
For the loading zone, or if we're gonna lease it?
For leasing a spot.
We don't have a specific ordinance on leasing the spot. I think it's just been handled through finance. typically. I mean, it's probably something that should be done through.
Yeah,
council.
well, that's my concern is we've had other business owners come here and ask these same
Right.
questions about
That's-
leasing
That's why I
spots.
said I think we could only do a loading zone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that would be my concern with their request, what their ask would be doing that, especially when we've had other people come here and ask, and
I would
you know, we-
agree with you. I think you need to pass an ordinance and just deal with finance on that financial charge, they typically charge.
And we'd be fine with the loading zone. I mean, it serves the exact same purpose that we was looking to achieve with controlling the parking spaces, so, and like Mr. Marshall's point right there, probably need another loading zone on Main Street anyways. There's been countless times that tractor trailers have been parked and blocking one lane of downtown. I know Bluebird right across the street gets their deliveries of tractor trailers, and they typically block one lane of traffic because the existing loading zones are not long enough, not big enough to support trailer spaces.
So would that be monitored by our traffic or
I honestly, I think it'd be a traffic situation, through the police and that sort of stuff. Mr. Carter, Brian, would be a better idea.
I think all they need to do is designate a limit of time, loading and unloading zone for starting and ending period. And it's, they can use it for limited loading and unloading, loading and unloading, and they pull out.
But-
There's no more issue.
Rich, what I'm getting at, if a citizen comes and parks in that loading zone and leaves their car there, what do we do about that?
What's the enforcement mechanism?
Huh?
It'd probably be a policeman.
Enforcement or, okay,
If it's a loading zone, they go for the loading permit to park.
anybody?
They go for the loading permit.
And but we could designate time limits on that?
The ordinance already says it's a half
Half hour?
hour.
Okay.
So
And
if anybody with a loading permit, why would we charge one person? If anybody on Main Street, because we talk about other tractors stopping there and parking in the middle of the street. If another truck would pull up and use that space, why would it be one person downtown paying for that?
Two different issues.
Who would be paying for that, Jerry?
You're confusing leasing them the spots with loading zone.
Oh, so there's no payment for. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. All right, got it.
Yeah.
If you make it a loading zone, anybody can park.
Okay.
Load has a permit.
Gotcha. I was thinking Johnny D's has one. I didn't know if they paid it because we were talking about other businesses that had it downtown.
The problem with leasing is after 5 o'clock parking down there, they leave. It's not full, they parking there. And if somebody parks there, we really don't have a right to just throw it out.
Right.
But the loading zone, we have a right to move those vehicles.
Well, I think we need to change that. I think loading zones are only through daylight hours. Yeah. So we can general daylight hours, and then, you either have to have a permit for the loading zone, or I think it also says if it's clear commercial vehicle.
Do you get delivery?
Tractor trailer.
Yes. Yeah, so, I mean, really.
And in that situation, would meters still remain? I mean, or it would be totally gone? Okay.
Yeah, biometrics, I mean, they had 3 spots there, Jimmy, for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no meters.
Well, in that situation, it was a lease situation. I guess what I'm asking is, if it's a loading zone, there would be no meters.
No, loading zones do not have meters.
I guess my concern would be, in that case, people might be parking there after business hours. Say, somebody comes down and stops down for a drink at 4:30, 5 o'clock or whatever. There's really no enforcement. I mean, I understand there may not be a delivery at that time, but, you have people parked in paid spots, and then at the same time, you have people just parked right in front of their business.
Yeah.
And the paid spots aren't enforced in the evening either.
Well, I guess that makes
Yeah.
it's true too.
They're not ticketing them in the evening, any of the meter spots. Right.
And we wouldn't be having deliveries in those after hours either.
Sure, that's how it was interpreted earlier.
Well, if there's no more questions, because I think we've got most of our answers. I hope you're satisfied, but I just want to make sure going forward, what we direct Steve to do, and that's with Steve and our attorney and our finance director to work on some plans or some ideas with the Vino tax incentives, giving us some ideas of what you could present to us going forward that we will approve for these folks. Is that okay? The second one on this list, I said the 2-inch water line. We hadn't talked about that, but what I see on here is without septic service. Now, we kind of talked about that. I mentioned it down there. You said about 60% of the water is going to be going back into, and I, you said it was clean water, and I said this doesn't make a difference. But are you asking for relief from the water usage that you take in to what goes back out into our system?
That's why we was looking at having a separate meter. We'd have 2 meters, 1 meter with the full sewer charge, so the water and the sewer, that's going back into the system would have that full sewer charge, but then a separate meter without the sewer charge.
That will not be, okay.
Yeah, with no
and
sewer
I
charge.
guess would that be
That'll have to go to the
sanitary board? And that's what I'm gonna say, direct the interim city manager to get with the sanitary board and figure out that, because that's they have the authority on that. So you will get with the sanitary board to discuss that.
Will be Tuesday.
And I've talked with Drew Eddy, the plant manager, and they're going to take probably a guarded approach. And what I mean by that is they're going to want to see, because the water going in is going to be metered. Obviously, you're going to pay for the water itself. So they're going to take estimates, maybe 60, 90 days, maybe 120 days, to see what your consistency or your average is, so they can get a feel for how much septage it's still going back into the system. They still have to treat that septage. As it comes in, it's still coming into the sewer system. Although it may not have the solids and the other stuff that you guys have described, it's still treatable septage for them. They got to receive it back. So then they'll make probably a learned or an informed decision in regards to that.
Okay. So I guess that's
it is a workable solution.
Getting back to the cart and the horse right there of knowing what's possible before we're making the commitment. But it sounds like they need to see it in operation before making concessions. So
that's what I say. I don't think
it's kind of a chicken and egg scenario.
I don't think a city manager has the authority to make that decision to say, oh, we'll just waive that based upon what we've been told. They will have to look into that and determine. The sanitary board is a separate.
They need to look at that as well.
Okay. And the last thing was and we've discussed this, and we'll come up with a plan with the least space, the 4 spaces that you're talking about.
When's the sanitary board meeting again?
Tuesday.
This coming Tuesday?
Yeah. Okay. Does that cover basically?
Yeah, and then just as far as the timeline, like I said, we're at a standstill until we get these determinations. So I don't know, how much time Mr. Marsh would need to put something together, but.
Well, I'm sure that'll be a priority. The interim city manager will get these, our finance director and attorney together and get something that council's gonna have to look at to approve before.
Ideally to be able to keep schedule on track, to be able to be opening here for the summer season, pending there's no major issues or hurdle here, we'd like to see it be able to go before council vote at next week's council session. It sounds like, if there's already preliminary structure there, everything has in mind, we can review, relatively quick, most likely within 24 hours after it's sent with us, make sure we're good with the language and wording within it. And that sounds like the loading zone is already an identifiable solution that could go before a vote. If at least those 2 items can go before a vote, we can look at proceeding forward without, go ahead from the sanitary, so we can get the lease executed, start the licensing, and get everything on track to get open this year. Does it seem like a realistic timeline to have the B&O document generated, ready for vote by next week? So.
But you just brought us some more last week, I believe.
We actually made initial contact in December. So yeah, and that was kind of a shock to us, the council members saying we first heard about this last week because there's been a few meetings, ongoing email communication, But the initial contact was right there at the end of December. And then we've been trying to push us along ever since then. So, we don't know the inner workings or, how council's briefed on pending matters or pending things. But on our end, from our perspective, this has been, 3+ months ongoing, with a similar dialogue. So, we would like to, if at all possible, like to go get on the agenda for next week. So we can continue our plans moving forward, because like I said, we're at a standstill right now, waiting on this before we can proceed. And with that TTB timeline, summer's gonna be right around the corner. And, this is a business that's definitely intensified by summer, good weather and people out and about. To push this off and open in the wintertime, would have to be another thing we'd have to take into our projections and see whether this would be still viable.
I would like to point out to council that on the email that you received, that we did not receive any of these concessions that they asked for until February 28th.
I believe those requested in the meeting we had on first week of January.
January 5th, yes.
Yeah, January 5th,
This
whenever.
was the first consult, was February 27th.
Okay. But we did have a discussion there, January
We had a
5th,
discussion, and that was.
with these three same
No, sir.
requests.
None of these were discussed at that meeting. You just proposed
I
myself.
believe Mr. Whitmore using the
Mr.
meeting
Whitmore
too
was
with him
there.
as well. So, yeah,
And Brittany was there.
yeah, and Brittany,
And you
yeah,
just-
those,
You brought in the potential for bringing in some people for a brew pub.
yeah, the B&O request, the parking request, and the water request was the three requests that we made in that meeting, that I recall. So, see, like I said, for us, we initiated conversation end of December, had our first meeting January 5th. Whenever, I believe sometime late January, early February, there is whenever we had asked, why we hadn't received a response. I believe I came to a council meeting for a response. And I believe, at that time, I think Steve, you told me that because we hadn't sent anything over in writing is why there hasn't been a response. We apologize for that, immediately shot it over to you in writing, but, on January 5th meeting, whenever it was presented, that's to us when we initially presented it to the city. And we'll apologize it wasn't presented in writing then, but, it was discussed. We did hold a meeting on it. And we was waiting for responses then while we was working on other matters with the business.
Well, I think I'd trust my interim city manager, and what he says, I think I'll go by Mr. Lane. I think he's pretty upfront and honest with what he does. And he says he was presented on February 27th, and I'll go with that, if that's okay with you.
Okay, as long as he's disputing, I presented it on January 5th. Because he did acknowledge the meeting took place.
Yes, the meeting did take place, but none of these incentives were asked for at that meeting.
And that's good.
I'm assuming
We'll
Mr.
move on.
Whitmore will dispute that as well.
Well, I'm gonna go by what the interim city manager says. He's pretty reliable, pretty responsible, and I don't think he has any reason to say something that wasn't happening, Chris. So I'll go with what he says. And we'll try to move forward as fast as we can. We thank you for coming, and we'll move on to the next item if we could. Let's see, what is that? The comprehensive plan,
Well, moment, I'm just gonna be saying on TV real quick.
We're in the restroom.
Chris,
Me too.
Jimmy?
you all right to go?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Chris, did you want these back?
Yes.
Hey, Councilman Apple, can you tell us what the score of the game is?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell us what the score of the game is when you leave?
I got dinner.
Here's these three, right?
The full package.
Okay. This one as well? Okay.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
It would work way better with some samples, by the way.
Well, thank you, thank you.
Other than that,
We got one.
Thanks, man.
put any questions down. I'll get my pen and paper out here. If you guys want to fire any questions on sort of at the beginning, we can certainly do that, or however you'd like to conduct our discussion. So, yeah.
No. What was that question again?
If you have questions.
Does anybody have any questions that they want to put out to the group as a whole in terms of things that they've either read or considerations for, again, like the action part, things of that nature? I think the scaling of these actions have been ones in working through with staff and what people in the process have identified, we think, are doable, but also knowing that there's going to be a sequence of work that is going to be, needing to be done. So, any questions?
Well, just on my part, I just received this today. I didn't go online. It's my fault. I like to see in paper. So this is my first view of this plan. And I asked a question a while back about, that I was I might have been misunderstanding. I didn't understand why this council didn't have any input in this process, that we had no meetings with the city council. I know they were meeting out with the public, and I felt like that I shouldn't go as a council person or as the mayor to have any influence on what the people in the general public was saying. I assumed, and I guess I assumed wrong, that there would be a phase where you would meet with council to kind of go over our ideas and what we thought our future 10-year plan would look like, but we had no input or no discussion like that. Now, maybe I'm wrong by thinking that we probably should have had some of that. Maybe you could tell me, is that customary that the council who's implementing this plan and who's going to probably be directing it and working with it, not to have any input? Is that generally how that happens?
I'm anticipating having, well, no, it is not customary, but I believe from the different types of sessions that we did have with the planning commission, and I thought that I had met with you all, as part of, a council briefing time or two, that we would have been able to, put some things out there together. So if you're anticipating that you would like to have some focused time on each of these action areas or things like that, then, we're gonna need to arrange that, to put that together. I'm not exactly certain the scale beyond, the time we've had together, what you're thinking about there. So let me take a look. Are there particular actions, or areas of focus that you think are ones that need some more time or emphasis?
I can't say, because honestly, this is my first look at this plan. I was hoping that you would come and kind of go over, what is in here, and see if there's areas that we feel like we need to have some input on. And that's how I would anticipate it to be done. But am I wrong? Is this not kind of a finished document ready to be published and put out there?
It was our expectation, yes, based on, we met with planning commission. That was the way in which I think you all had this structure, that planning commission was putting together a document, and we were working with them as the primary group to make a recommendation in front of you all. So that was our understanding of sort of coming to you. I think that the discussions that we had, I believe there was, and please correct me, John, if I'm off base, it was November, was prior to sort of the release. So I'm open here. I'm trying to figure this one out with you, I think.
Yes, so it's been the current.
Because it was one that, I mean, in terms of that 45 days to go out or, public review.
Yeah, so
Yes,
in terms of the.
thinking, now, if we're going to be doing some policy shifts and things of that nature based on, what we come together to determine to include in the plan, then that's maybe something that's gonna need to go back out also for public review. So everybody has a chance to look at it. However you'd like to do it.
And the plan document you see before you today, this is pretty much the exact same document that was the public hearing draft for the Planning Commission in November. We had initially anticipated for December approval. We were unable to get a quorum for that meeting, so in January, the Planning Commission has recommended this document be approved. The overall planning process encompasses the entire community. If there are items that in reviewing this document that you're seeing that we would like to have changed, we have the opportunity to get all that information, send it back to the Planning Commission for consideration, and then to provide another draft then for review. In terms of as a document for council action, the comprehensive plan is the community's vision. With the comp plan, once that's developed by the community, the council, you can provide a strategic plan in keeping with those general goals and the elements of the plan. But overall, this is a work product of your planning commission. We can have more focus from the council if council would like to do that. But with what we were doing with this project process was having multitude of community meetings over a long period of time. So we're hopeful that you're not going to be finding much that you're going to be disagreeing with, because we really put a lot of effort in trying to keep it very broad to encompass everything that the community was saying. And Carolyn can get into especially when we're talking about the four just general areas, specifically how this plan functions. So I would suggest let's have just a general discussion now, and we can go from there to determine if we need to have this on another workshop to discuss specific points, and then how we can move forward to either approval or to have it reviewed again.
I just had a question. I mean, I like the document. I've reviewed probably about half of it. But the one key feature of why we have a comprehensive plan in the first place that we were trying to achieve here in Clarksburg was future land use and development. So my question is, when it comes to the direction of future land use and development, comprehensively, what would that look like strategically?
So with that, it would be, the plan provides general ideas for annexation of lands near the current municipal boundary. It would strategically, so council could make a strategic goal within a term to identify specific property owners and either engage in the annexation process or find some method, like just figuring out some way as a collective body to actually implement what you want to see implemented in the comprehensive plan. But so like for that, it's included in elements related to, let's see, we had the keeping it clean, like in terms of redevelopment of existing properties and infill development. So as opposed to some plans that are more focused on annexation and how growth will occur, we were looking more for how do we use what we have and not necessarily just maintain, but make it enriching.
So would hybrid zoning have to have a lot to do with that?
It's in there, yeah, and that's included. We have included with this plan, there's like a 5-year direct timeline of items that need to happen. The very next one is the zoning, zoning and SALDO ordinance updates. And we get into the hybrid, having form-based code elements into the zoning ordinance to allow for increased uses, but also making sure that the architectural style of a block of a building, it's something that the community wants to see, as opposed to, say, CMU, cut masonry unit, blank block buildings everywhere. Like you have an option to make what your community be what you want to see. So that, yes, it's in there. That process would, once adoption occurs, that would be the very next steps that the planning commission would be engaged with staff to have that zoning ordinance update.
And also,
I believe planning commission has expressed that interest in their meetings to get started on that as well. So readiness, as you said, John. Pardon, go.
and also on page 34, when it talks about land bank opportunities, can you just kind of, I know it gives a list of what a land reuse agency versus a URA powers are. Can you just for us that may not have read it, word for word, because that's part of the, future development and planning of our city, that your staff and stuff are going to be developing for this summer. Can you discuss the differences between the URA and the LRA?
So generally, they are both organizations, they're bodies of, they'd be the bodies of the city of Clarksburg. The Urban Renewal Authority is a product of the urban renewal activities of the 50s and 60s. It is generally a demolition tool, but it has the ability to utilize eminent domain to acquire property. So it has that's why it was the catalyst in Huntington for the land bank. So we have a URA here. It's active. It's not necessarily engaged in eminent domain at this time, but by having a land reuse agency, we'd be able to also utilize powers associated with right of first refusal for tax sale properties. So that's a benefit that was relatively new for land reuse agencies. Using that power, you can acquire properties through tax sale that would otherwise continue to flip between bad actors or people that are not going to develop them. So you can be able to acquire properties, group them together. You have a big agglomeration or a cluster of properties. Now you have something that you can develop into either single family housing or into some kind of productive use. Utilizing both of those together, and this is something I've been discussing with the land use law clinic at WVU. To my knowledge, Huntington had one. Their land reuse agency is kind of in a shuffle right now, with Crystal having gone up to the state. But having a city with actually a functional URA and a functional land reuse agency, what you could do is you could acquire even larger scale properties and get into potential for either mixed use development on a community scale. So having what you would see like and the NVR or the Dan Ryan Builders doing, something that we could actually market to a national firm or something that we can market to a developer with the capital to actually develop a large scale project. But the benefit we can provide then to the developer is always going to be land costs and clear title.
And with that said, Mr. Whitmore, how does the on page 34 the land reuse agency and plus how does that fall in line? How does that impact the comprehensive plan as a whole, or how does the comprehensive plan impact? Does the comprehensive plan, needing the comprehensive plan, does that impact whether or not we can have a land reuse agency?
So a comprehensive plan traditionally is an ordinance. We're recommending that you adopt this as a resolution. And the reason we say it, staff is recommending this, is because even West Virginia Supreme Court has recognized that A comprehensive plan as law it's the weakest law that exists because it's all recommendations. It's all about economic conditions that can change rapidly. And on a 30-year time frame, it's not necessarily feasible to require all decisions go back to it. There's even loopholes. I wouldn't say loopholes, but there's language within the law that allows for planning to be circumvented if economic conditions make sense. So what is in the current plan draft that's before you has a time frame where you would be able to be justified in creating a land reuse agency. Does it have to be in the comprehensive plan? No. Does anything have to be in the comprehensive plan? No. But when we're looking for grants and we're looking for funding for organizations, if it's in the comprehensive plan, and I can put on that application what page it's on, that makes that application a lot better than we don't know what we're doing. So in that sense, there's some benefits that aren't necessarily realized as if it weren't in the plan.
But in the comprehensive plan, if we're going to do zoning ordinance changes, shouldn't those zoning ordinance changes reflect what's in the comprehensive plan?
Yes, and so when you're making a change to the zoning ordinance, you're supposed to be basing it. You're going to be receiving a recommendation from the planning commission, and the planning commission is going to be basing their recommendation on is the requested change in keeping with the comprehensive plan. But like I said,
I think there's an important part of this plan that may not have been in other types of things, and that goes back to that discussion a few moments ago about the infill. And so the nature of what is done in a zoning ordinance when it comes to infill is pretty different than what is done, right, when there's something that's sort of new development, more greenfield, that kind of thing. So I think in what kinds of points you're hitting here, questions, I think there is actually some really important tie between this kind of tool on, say, page 34 and some other other things in the document, tie back to the infill piece and the policy update that's actually adopted by ordinance. So this one fundamentally is that resolution. It is the big umbrella to try and, almost invert, like catch the rain of what's coming down and see how it all, comes together. And then being able to have this be broad enough that these kinds of things can be shaped in different areas of town, in the city, and, and the scales that are going to need to be addressed, even the scale of development or the size of things, the access for it, the setbacks, the character, all those kinds of things. So written broadly enough that, again, was, John, I do want to emphasize, because there are so many other things out there that you can then say in our comprehensive plan, we'd like to start to thread them, right? For other things that are going on outside the city or dollars for those kinds of projects.
That's the only questions I had. Thank
you. I had a question. You touched on it, but I don't see much in here. Was annexation to? Is it touched upon in this?
It's touched upon. We're
page 9.
Yeah, we're not really looking at specific areas for annexation except for those that are in near vicinity of the existing boundaries. So, Mr. Lane's property is a good example. Staff has previously worked with Mr. Lane on getting an annexation proposal together. This plan would allow you, it would be in keeping with the plan for that area to be considered for annexation. It's open-ended in that regard, but it's really focused on infill development.
Okay, but for our city to grow, we're kind of landlocked, and residential developments, we just don't have any of that. We don't have any property to do that. And I was looking out west. If we go to the west of our city, there's properties out there, and I would have thought that we would kind of look at that area for possible housing developments in the future and so forth, if we can take that land in. But apparently we never looked at that possibility, right?
Not with this plan. I kind of go back to the land use side on this. That when we're looking for annexation, there's pluses and minuses, and when we're talking, especially when it's whatever the developer is going to be physically building. We haven't specifically looked into any agreements or anything like that to facilitate residential housing. So I mean, this is something that wasn't on our radar for this plan.
Okay.
We can, I mean, if you would want to, we can definitely include additional study for potential residential areas. But
well, you mentioned Dan Ryan. Somebody did, Dan
yeah.
Ryan. And actually Dan Ryan, several years ago, wanted to annex property, and we took in a 65-acre tract of land, and that's still in our city limits, but nothing has been done with that. There's potential good upscale housing sites to utilize that. And that's why I say out west, and there's some where the old hospital is, we annexed the road to Liberty High School, and there's potential for development out there for residential housing. Because we just don't have any, and we can't go east. And
There's still a lot up at the quarry too.
Yeah. So I mean, we got to look at that. I think. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, so in the time frame of 10 years, which is generally this document, right? The topics that were brought to all of the public meetings, I think consistently, as well as the kinds of things that are in need to address with, like, in an immediacy within your ordinances that exist today, that I am not certain, this is strictly from a planning side, this is not from a resident side, it is not from an official side. I don't know if it is in the best interest of the city of Clarksburg to have annexation as one of its focus items in the next decade, given all of the other things as it relates to infill and potential for redevelopment and the ordinances that need to be updated and those policies. I'm thinking about the resources that would be necessary to go through those things. And I'm not saying that annexation at some point in time for additional lands isn't applicable, but within this 10-year time frame, it is not something, I mean, John is identifying it's on the radar. I'm not certain it's in the sphere of how time and dollar allocations and those kinds of things would be best serving the city as a whole within the context of this plan.
Okay.
With that said, there is the write-up for it so that if in the readiness to, in the next plan that you're thinking about setting the stage for that kind of thing, then it is clearly in here to have as a step, but it is not called out as specific action or physical spaces. And if that's something that wants to be reconsidered, we need to do that, but I'm hoping that I'm expressing the consideration for quite the number of other things that have a more significant priority as of today.
Okay, that makes sense. I understand what you're saying. I know we extended a sewer line out to there. They have water. They have the infrastructure already in place out where I'm talking about. So, and it's just the land is there, and I think that's just my personal view. And again, that's why we had a council. But that I would like to see some residential development. There's a housing shortage and a housing need in Clarksburg, so that's evident. We definitely have a housing shortage, and if we have this property that already has infrastructure. As Gary said, the quarry has the infrastructure already to it, our water, and we have sewage. So I think it should be, I don't know if it should be our number one priority. I know we have a lot of other things, and so what you said makes sense, but I still feel we need to explore that. And it's not even necessarily the annexation. We already have annexed a lot of that property in, but we could look about how we develop that property that is out there. Anyway, we'll go on.
I think that gets at that infield piece actually, so I think we're saying the same thing actually.
Okay. Council, anybody have?
I'm curious, John, are the ideas that we see in this document, is that something that staff is gonna bring to us in the coming weeks and months to say, as identified in the comprehensive plan, we would like council to take up on the action of X, Y, Z? Is that something that you're gonna do? Is that gonna be what we're supposed to, we're supposed to,
Well,
how's that gonna work out?
so we're going to be bringing you specifically the items related to the land use ordinance, related to creation of new boards. That's going to be coming from staff.
Okay.
You all came onto council wanting to do things. They're not going to necessarily be represented in this plan. If there's ways to tie the plan into things that you want to see council do, that's why I go back to the strategic plan that you all can create to focus your energies. Additionally, if there's items that you're not seeing and that we get to a point where, hey, this should be in the comprehensive plan and there's funded, with the resolution process, we're in a position to modify this document pretty quickly, as opposed to ordinance changes, which a comp plan, it's beneficial to have it on either a yearly schedule or some kind of defined schedule, so that it's not like year 7, year 8, and all of a sudden the document's completely out of whack. You're going to have to judge our performance on what we're bringing to you based on this document. So
That makes sense.
I mean, if you want us to be doing more about what's in the plan, I mean, that's something I'd recommend bringing up with the city manager, and he'll bring it up with us.
Thanks, Sean, I appreciate it.
So when it comes to, I lied to you, I'm going to ask a couple more questions. When it comes to residential infill development, since that's kind of been the hot topic tonight with this comp plan here, I do see here that the establishment of a land bank would be a positive step to, helping assist with the development of given title issues. Also, when it comes to, it would also help when it comes to consolidating some of these structures and avoiding these tax sale issues, since we'll be able to, buy these properties first at tax sale. That would be a pretty significant catalyst, for, to help us with the infill development issue, especially in a lot of areas that have vacant properties that are dilapidated, that are delinquent on taxes. My question is, when I look at this commercial infill development, I read here that, there are programs such as these new market tax credits and opportunity zone designations, which encompass, a pretty good sizable portion of our city. How would we aggressively attack those new market tax credits and those opportunity zone designations when it comes to successful commercial infill development?
Well, the opportunity zones, a qualified opportunity zone exists right now. We're in one. It is challenging to make those work. I think the program in general, the way in functioning, you have to be able to find somebody with enough capital gains to offset it. It's a little bit difficult. What we have found is that it's not necessarily people that are even going to be taking advantage of the actual that tax provision of the capital of the opportunity zone legislation. It's more about having just, we're located in the same census tract as an opportunity zone. So it's a check mark on a box on an application, either for a housing product or a loan product. So, and then going to new market tax credits, the issue we have with that one, there's no application that's currently open. The only real funding that we can get through that is it's a loan program associated through West Banco. So for properties that are south of 50, so like a downtown area, I do not believe Glen Elk is included, but there's a pretty large core chunk of the city that is eligible for that loan program. But if there's opportunities for us to, like, let's say, an opportunity for the opportunity zone. One of the things that the Harrison County Economic Development Corporation, Amy Wilson over there, keeps mentioning, and we are going to be pursuing it if we can, at least to bring it to you, is having an opportunity zone designation citywide. That way, that helps our ability to pursue funding for, especially when it relates to HUD funds for low to moderate income populations. It's like automatic check marks, which it doesn't get to the heart of actually utilizing the program for what it was intended to be used for, but it's how we can use the program. There will be future programs as well. Opportunity zones. I mean, before that it was empowerment zones. And there were free trade zones. I mean, the federal government every decade or so will come up with a zone-based income incentive, and it's always targeting low to moderate income populations. So, unfortunately, as long as we have concentrations of poverty in the city in certain locations, we will have these designations. Comp plan is telling us we need to actually look for ways to utilize these designations for good.
And so with the new market tax credits, I mean, it's in the comp plan. How would that be advantageous for utilization of those?
Well, so that program, you're creating jobs. Specifically, you have to create decent, I believe it's like a full-time equivalency based on either, I want to say median income. So it's just this general language. I'm saying that the comp plan would be it informs staff to look for these programs that would benefit from that. But then also, if we're able to have a project come in, so I'll give you an example. Let's say the Waldo were to come in. New markets would make a lot of sense if they're going to be able to put commercial into the bottom floors. So it provides emphasis then for us to help with the project. And then also then link that back up for like historic tax credits, any other programs to assist with the redevelopment project. It's saying we're going to be having it in black and white and on a page, it makes things move.
I appreciate that. I mean, I ask these questions because, I mean, if you're going to have a comprehensive plan, at least for me as a councilman, I just don't want it sitting collecting dust, and then 10 years later, we're kind of asking ourselves, why didn't we come up with some strategy to try to implement some of this stuff, especially if it costs $67,000.
And I think the other side of that is the scale of the actions that are in here are the ones in that time frame that are going to be movable, right? Keep moving towards the goal post and still have enough flexibility so that if there is something that can be married together from another project or, those kinds of things, that you're going to be able to use it in that way. So very, very much in tune with what you're identifying. Thank you.
When are we going to act on going to be on the next agenda, or how we want to handle that?
Well,
It'll give us
Well, you recommended a resolution, so
it has been recommended. It has to be acted upon one way or another by council. I believe it would be the first meeting in April. preferably, if we need to discuss this again at a future workshop, we can do that with staff. And if we, after that, then we can bring it to council, but I mean, it's been in the state it's in since November.
Can you answer just one more question for me, this in relation to the resolution versus ordinance?
Yeah.
And maybe you answered this question at the beginning. So what is the advantages in passing this as a resolution versus an ordinance?
One reading.
Okay. That's all I need.
Well, I think the other one too is that the scale of what these recommendations are have a fluidity to them, again, that you're going to be coupling with other things. And the resolution is the kind of action that gives you that ability to, move as you need to in that way because it's guiding. So we would recommend that as well.
Yeah, one thing, I mean, a comprehensive plan can be used as like a cudgel to stop development and to stop things. And we really just want this to be, not to be a speed bump or some kind of some handcuffing motion that you can't get out of. You have to follow the plan and we can't do it. We want you to be able to have a document that if it's not working, we can fix it and make it work.
Okay. I would leave this up onto the council, what they would like to see. Do you feel we need to take this, read it, look it over, and see if we want to have another meeting to have things explained a little bit more? Or are you comfortable with this document to get it? Because I think, I don't want it to happen to what you just said. We get it, it goes into the manager's office and he puts it up on the shelf and we never see it again. So I think we need to be comfortable with what's in here to move forward with it. But I'll take whatever recommendations you guys would like to see us do with this.
Mr. Mayor, I think it'd be good to pass as a resolution, because if we do look at it down the road and we feel like it needs to be amended, we could always revisit that. I think it does address a lot of the land reuse stuff and land use development and zoning ordinances that we would like to achieve to see development. I think periodically what we should do is, we should have work sessions specifically, and this would probably be contingent on whether staff, are reading this. But when we want to try to pass an ordinance or a zoning ordinance, whatever it may be, or land reuse agency or whatever that may mean, or something that is in this comprehensive plan, that periodically during a work session, we, those components within this comprehensive plan is pointed out. That way we know how that matches with our strategic plan on things going forward. As for the document itself, I mean, just me personally as one council member, I think it's ready for resolutions.
Yeah, I agree with him. I think it's fine. I mean, it really, if you look at it, it's very broad. And I mean, I think it's really intended to be what people went to them and said they wanted anyway. So it is what it is. I mean, we spent some money and we met the state code. That's the way I look at it. I'm sorry.
It's a lot of money to meet the state code. And we did an intern and did the last one in 2010. And
that's probably what we should have done.
It cost about zero to do. And so it's just a big ticket item, in my opinion, and that's why I'm pretty we need to use it, follow it, and go, and not stick it on a shelf.
I would like to see a potential hire for city manager have some input on this. But I don't think that we, couldn't do
the resolution.
Yeah.
And then, because it's a document that can be picked up and looked at and so forth. So I think that would be whoever the new city manager would, hey, pick this up and get some input and let's move forward.
Are there any limitations to that? I mean,
no,
is it similar to the budget, like we have to do it certain times of the year, or can we just mess with it anytime?
You can mess with it anytime. I would from an economic development department, like from a staffing perspective, it makes sense to review it at least at a minimum on a yearly schedule. That way, you also provide an opportunity for the public, if they're seeing things, they can come in on a schedule and understand, instead of coming in like throughout the year asking for certain things. We can have everything a little more streamlined at that. But we're hopeful and we're confident that the document will work in the manner that council will be able to work with it and mold it as necessary.
Okay, I think, I get that we would like to see that, be a resolution, at our next council meeting. That's, okay, if we could do that. Richard? Sound good? Okay. I think with that being done, we want to adjourn.
Adjourn, I guess.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
We are well into that.